How $20 to sabotage a blind date led to an incredible love story with a millionaire CEO? Emily paced around her small art studio, the air thick with colors yet somehow suffocating. It felt like a shrine to her father, his laughter echoing amidst the canvases and sketches, now overshadowed by loss. Losing him felt like tearing apart her very heartbeat, and now, clutching a paintbrush had become a reminder of everything she had lost. It wasn't about the colors or the canvases, it was about the legacy that had been entrusted to her. Her mother, always with the best intentions, nudged her into a blind date with Daniel, a CEO from the other side of the tracks. A successful executive? She doubted he would ever understand her world. As if wealth could somehow diminish her talents. That comment had struck under her skin. She scrolled through her phone, feeling defeated. A date with a man who belonged in a world she barely understood, with his fancy lifestyle and extravagant projects. What would they even talk about? She couldn't even wear heels without feeling like a fraud. While her best friend coaxed her into stepping out of her comfort zone, Emily clung to her resentment. The idea of sabotaging the date with a glitter bomb felt like a harmless rebellion, a way to maintain her delicate balance of disdain and hope. What could $20 bring anyway? Just a brief sparkle on a perfect outfit, futile messiness meant to chase him away. But deep down, a voice whispered, would it even work? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the hour drew near, a knot tightened in her stomach. What if he showed up? She could barely breathe thinking about the stark divide they'd navigate together. The churning doubts flared. Would he want anything to do with her once he realized her struggles? Anxiety clawed at her, pushing her towards denial. But when Daniel arrived, a shock of genuine warmth radiated from him, disrupting her cynical preconceptions. He was charming, seemingly effortless, drawing her into conversations that made her laugh. Not just any laugh, but the kind that soothed the raw edges of her spirit. As they exchanged stories, vulnerability seeped through their laughter. It was both frightening and liberating, a mirror reflecting aspects of herself she thought she buried. Yet as their bond blossomed, lurking shadows weighed heavier on her. Daniel spoke of expectations, the gilded chains of his upbringing, making her realize that maybe they weren't as different as she had thought. She opened up about her fears, her father's legacy resting so precariously on her shoulders, the studio barely making ends meet. Days of dreary uncertainty loomed, and the fear of acceptance tugged at her, gnawing at her heart like an unyielding parasite. They floated between shared laughs and unspoken fears, but each time he complimented her artistry, her heart tightened. Could she truly exist in the glittering world alongside someone like Daniel? Where would she even fit in? The soft air became a choking tension as she realized love might demand a reckoning. How to mend her world with his without losing the vibrant pieces of herself that truly mattered. The date closed, and they parted with tentative promises of more. But Emily lingered in the doorway, caught in the whirlpool of anticipation and dread. Could she embrace this unexpected love, or was retreat into security her only escape? Her heart raced, a burgeoning anguish that pulled her between two worlds, waiting for the weight of unresolved choices to drag her under. The next morning, Emily sat in her studio, the sunlight filtering through the dusty windows, illuminating the vibrant chaos around her. It was a world bound in splashes of color, a place where she could mask her uncertainties. Yet today, the canvases seemed less like a refuge and more like another weight anchoring her to her fears. Each brushstroke from the previous night's date felt like an echo, reverberating in her chest, battling against the quiet dread that had settled in. She picked up her paintbrush, the familiar feel intended to inspire, but all it did was remind her of Daniel's easy laughter and the way he looked at her,
a gaze that made her feel seen. Was it in the way he spoke of his company, or perhaps the intimate vulnerability he shared about the burdens of his success? For the first time, the ordinary walls of her life felt constraining. As she blended hues on her palette, her mind returned to their conversation. Daniel had been candid about how his wealth often felt more like a prison than a blessing. It was unsettling. She had always believed that money alleviated struggles, not bound them. A flicker of curiosity stirred within her. Had she misjudged what she sought to escape? If the roots of their anxiety resembled each other, was the boundary really as rigid as she imagined? But how could she possibly let him into her life? The thought twisted her stomach. Emily had spent years perfecting her craft, navigating her father's legacy amidst uncertain tides and fleeting appreciation. Would integrating into Daniel's world mean discarding everything she fought for? It felt like losing herself for the sake of acceptance, a utopia she wasn't even sure she desired. She set the brush down with a definitive clink against the easel, trembling hands pulling back as she took a moment to breathe. The canvas bore no reflection of her true self, a paltry replication
Of what could have been had she been unshackled by doubt. What if she explored this connection with Daniel further? Could there be pieces of her artistry that merged with his world? A decision began to crystallize as she contemplated the aching chasm his promise of another date had left behind. Tentative plans could be laid out, albeit with caution. The time had come to... The thought hesitated, leaving her suspended in anticipation. What was she willing to face for a connection that could redefine her? Her phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with a message from Daniel. "Hey, I enjoyed our time together. Can we meet again? I want to learn more about your art." A whirlwind of emotions crashed through her, both exhilarating and paralyzing. Just like that, his simple words withdrew the safety net she had clung to. Learn more about your art. Those words befitted admiration, possibility, potential collaboration. Each syllable fed her excitement while stoking the fires of her insecurities. Would he truly understand her passion, or would he view it merely as a curiosity of his lifestyle? Emily's heart raced, the internal conflict vibrating through her as she typed a response. Could she engage without losing herself? "Sure," she wrote, tension coiling tightly in her chest. "How about tomorrow?" The clock ticked ominously as she hit send. The question loomed in the air. What would she reveal about herself, her art, her hurt? The stakes rose steeply, and with them the anxiety that she might finally unveil her heart to someone who would either uplift or dismantle her once again. But a newfound determination began to swell within her, a recognition that perhaps her art was not only about colors on canvas, but rather a pathway to self-discovery and, maybe, healing. Tomorrow awaited, the canvas of possibilities unfolding vast and uncharted. As she closed her eyes, the honesty of her vulnerability washed over her. She pondered how she might blend her world with his without forsaking the essence she held so dearly. Tomorrow's meeting loomed, a banquet of options, struggle or embrace, art or fear teeming together. The heart of the storm was approaching, and Emily stood poised at the mouth of the unknown. What revelations could arise when the fragile threads of her past intertwined with the fabric of someone else's present? Emily awoke the next morning, enveloped in a haze of uncertainty and restless anticipation. The moment she opened her eyes, Daniel's proposal echoed within her, stirring a mix of hope and anxiety. Moments before she reached for her phone to check the time, she paused, aware of how much had shifted overnight. This wasn't just another date. This was a chance to stitch her fragmented identity back together, possibly threading Daniel's world into her own. After a quick breakfast, she found herself pacing the studio, brushes and tubes of paint strewn about like the disarray of her thoughts. Memories flickered through her mind. Daniel's infectious enthusiasm, the vibrancy in his tone as he spoke about the projects he was passionate about. Could she, someone who'd battled tirelessly for her own recognition, share her journey with someone so seemingly successful? Was it worth the risk? As she peered at the blank canvas before her, she realized it mirrored her current emotional landscape.
Each stroke of paint would be an act of defiance against her self-doubt. She had spent too long coloring within the lines prescribed by anxiety and fear. Today she decided she would break free. Each brushstroke aimed to explore the vividness of her emotions, the textures of her struggles, and the richness of her dreams. With colors erupting onto the canvas, Emily lost herself briefly in her work. It was invigorating. The energy from the paint transcended her anxieties, replacing them with conviction. She poured the essence of her experiences, her doubts, her ambition, her fragmented stories into the painting as if solidifying her resolve. Daniel might be from a world she had once deemed unattainable, but she was an artist. She had the power to create her reality. Time slipped away until the hands of the clock nudged her toward a harsh reality. She needed to prepare for her meeting with Daniel. The exhilaration she once felt began to intertwine with unease again. Would she be able to communicate the depth of her art? Would he view her work as she intended, or would the barriers of status and wealth loom large? Standing in front of a mirror, Emily had a moment of reckoning. She drew in deep breaths, grounding herself in the present. This was not an audition where she had to perform a role. This was an opportunity to be herself, stripped bare, and to measure whether her vulnerability could elicit connection rather than judgment. She picked out a vibrant, flowing dress that mirrored the colors of her canvas, a symbol of both vibrancy and vulnerability. The drive to their meeting spot, a quaint cafe on the outskirts of town, felt like an eternity. Every passing moment heightened her anticipation. Yet with each breath, she reminded herself of something crucial. Every interaction held potential, both to transform and to teach. Opening the cafe door, the aroma of fresh coffee enveloped her, and she felt a flicker of confidence ignite within. As she approached their meeting point, guitar melodies floated in the air from a nearby musician, enhancing an atmosphere thick with possibility. Daniel was already seated, his gaze focused as he scribbled notes in a small leather-bound journal. The sight stirred her resolve. This man, who had shared his burdens with her, had chosen her art to explore further. "Hey, you made it!" Daniel looked up, his smile radiating warmth, and Emily instantly felt a thrill of comfort. As they exchanged pleasantries, curiosity piqued within her. What did he want to learn? More importantly, what might he teach her about the intersection of their lives? The conversation began to flow seamlessly, sparking like the colors she had smeared onto her canvas earlier. Birthdays, travels, and surprisingly deep insights about vulnerability took center stage, and slowly, Emily started revealing more about her artistic journey, her struggles, her ambitions, and her artistic philosophy. But then came the pivot, the question about her dreams, the one Daniel asked that quietly twisted her insides. What's your ultimate vision with your art? And in that moment, the divergence of their worlds felt less daunting but more electric. Was she truly ready to express her aspirations, her fears wrapped in ambition, to someone she barely knew? Uncertainty knotted her stomach, but this was precisely where the evolution of her narrative lay. Emily hesitated, the answer tumbling around in her mind like an ungrounded swirl of paint, as she opened her mouth to reveal her truth. What lay beneath the surface might redefine not just her story, but their potentially shared path forward. Could the leap into vulnerability carry them both into an unexpected shared revelation? As the cafe's chatter faded into the background, Emily prepared to unveil the depth of her art, and perhaps herself. Would this moment take her one step closer to a future she hadn't dared to consider? The moment was poised, a tender precipice where vulnerability met aspiration, and her delivery could either unravel or weave new connections. The weight of her words lingered in the air, fraught with possibility. Would she be bold enough to step into this unknown? Emily took a deep breath, steadying her thoughts as she searched for the words that could encapsulate her dreams. Her heart raced against the rhythmic thumping of her pulse, echoing in her ears. It wasn't just a question, this was a glimpse into her soul. Would the truth be an invitation into deeper connection, or a door slammed shut? Honestly, she began, her voice steadying as an undercurrent of determination surged through her. My ultimate vision with my art is to create pieces that resonate on a visceral level. I want people to see themselves in my work, to find a slice of their own struggles and triumphs reflected back. Daniel's eyes sparkled with interest, encouraging her to continue. She pressed on. I think art has this incredible power to connect us, to bridge these divides between our lived experiences. I've struggled to make my voice heard, and each piece I create is an emulation of that journey. I want to push boundaries, leave a mark. As her words tumbled out, she began to feel the weight of the moment lift. The knot in her stomach started to untangle as she gazed into Daniel's attentive expression. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she planned her next line, aware that honesty could invite intimacy. But what if it also invited judgment? That sounds ambitious, he replied, his tone layered with sincerity. I admire that. Art as a conversation starter, an exploration of identity is so needed today. His affirmation felt like a balm to her insecurities. She could feel the trust building between them, yet shadows of doubt lingering, threatening to
cloud the clarity she had just gained. How do you see that vision evolving? Daniel inquired, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. The musician nearby faded into mere background noise as she focused solely on him. If this was a pivotal moment, it called for courage. She hesitated, but the question stirred a deeper yearning within her. Honestly, I don't know, she admitted, threading her fingers together nervously. Sometimes I think about how art can change the world, but I feel stuck in this cycle of self-doubt. It's like I'm racing against the clock, trying to create something magnificent before I run out of time. Daniel's brow furrowed, absorbing her words. I think that's part of the journey, isn't it? You're allowing yourself to feel that pressure, but it's what makes your art authentic. Embracing the uncertainty is just as vital. His insight struck her like a flash of enlightenment. Words she'd scrunched away in fear bubbled up, memories of her past failures, fears, and fleeting moments of triumph, all coming back to her. She felt something new building inside her, a realization that vulnerability didn't just connect, it empowered. As their conversation deepened, she grasped the enormity of what was unfolding between them. She was revealing not just her art, but pieces of herself that she had kept hidden. Each confession built a bridge towards something unexpected, challenging the inner narrative that had always cast her as imperfect or unworthy. But then doubt crept back in. Why are you really interested in my story, Daniel? You could be meeting anyone else, artists with far more acclaim. That question hung between them, a gossamer thread of uncertainty. Would he view her as merely a passing fancy? The thought sent chills through her, causing her breath to hitch slightly. This felt like a defining moment that could reshape not just their relationship, but her own self-perception. Because your story is unique, Emily, he said softly, his sincerity pulling at her heartstrings. It's not about accolades, it's about authenticity. I want to know what's behind the canvas, who you are as a person. The air crackled with intensity, pregnant with potential. For the first time, Emily questioned if she could accept that type of connection, one that acknowledged both her past and her courageous steps toward the future. Would she dare to claim her narrative not only in art, but also in how she allowed herself to be perceived? Could Daniel be a guiding force on this journey rather than just a figure in her past fantasies? With an exhilarating yet terrifying sense of possibility, she prepared to take the leap, revealing the depths of her aspirations, boundless and vulnerable. And as she gathered her courage, she realized that this conversation might not just open doors to her future, but could potentially force her to confront her most significant barrier, the fear of her own worthiness. Could this be the moment where she began to redefine not just her vision, but her own identity? As she gathered her thoughts, the next question loomed in her mind like an open canvas waiting to be painted. What if revealing her aspirations meant not just exploration, but a challenge to old beliefs about herself? The unfolding of her truth held the key to not just her present interactions, but the pivotal evolution of her journey towards self-acceptance.
Would she be bold enough to reshape her reality? Emily felt the weight of possibilities settle on her shoulders like a dense fog. She knew that opening up about her deepest fears and wildest dreams also meant confronting her insecurities head-on. Daniel's steady gaze made her heart flutter, yet an undercurrent of trepidation swirled within her. Could she truly share the part of her that felt unworthy? Would this lead to acceptance or simply reinforce the walls she had built to protect herself? "Okay," she finally whispered. "I want to open my heart and share more, but I need to know, can you handle the truth?" His expression remained unwavering, encouraging yet enigmatic. "I want to understand you, Emily, not just your art. Feel free to share." Taking a deep breath, she began to unravel the layers of her past. "I've always been driven, but it's as if I wear this mask," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I create to be seen, but even creating feels like an uphill battle. I'm terrified of failing, terrified that what I put out into the world won't matter." There it was, the fear that had haunted her for so long, laid bare in front of Daniel. Internally, her thoughts raced. Why was she sharing this? Was it merely a moment of courage, or was she opening a can of worms that could pull her down further? Yet, something about Daniel's gaze melted her reservations. He wasn't here to judge her, he was here to witness her. "What if I told you that sharing your fears is just as powerful as sharing your triumphs?" he replied, his voice low, almost reverent. "It could resonate with others in ways you might never expect." A flicker of hope ignited inside her. Maybe he was right. Maybe by acknowledging her vulnerabilities, she could create art that not only reflected her struggles, but also empowered others to face theirs. "I've been thinking about this new piece," she mused, allowing the thread of inspiration to weave into her fears. "I wanted to encapsulate that emotional turmoil, symbolizing the juxtaposition between vulnerability and strength. If it resonates with even one person, then it's worth it, right?" "Yes," he affirmed, leaning deeper into their conversation. His belief in her ignited her own urge to believe. "Your journey is meaningful, and it can shape the way others see their own experiences." The clouds of self-doubt that had loomed overhead started to disperse, revealing a clarity she'd only dreamt of. With every word exchanged, she could feel the contours of her self-image shifting. But, just as she felt empowered, the gnawing question of her worth resurfaced. Was she enough? Would her art hold value in a world filled with seasoned artists? Silencing that internal critic was her next challenge. "But Daniel, what if my work is just another drop in a vast ocean? How do I know it truly matters?" "Start by giving yourself permission to create without the weight of others' expectations," he advised gently. "Your journey is unique, and this authenticity could carve out a space for you that others cannot fill. Isn't that what truly matters?" With each affirmation, Emily felt a reservoir of resilience swell within her. The doubt was still lingering, but it was backed by an undeniable urge to break free from its grip. The urge to create staggered between her fears and her newfound courage. As their communion deepened, she realized this conversation was opening floodgates she hadn't even noticed were closed. But with every revelation of her heart, an entirely new question began to dawn on her. If she were to amplify her own voice through her art, what responsibilities would it entail? What repercussions might arise if she laid all her vulnerabilities before the world? The atmosphere shifted, thickening with her doubts, yet simultaneously sizzling with energy. Emily's pulse quickened. This was no longer just about art. It was about finding herself through authenticity. As they reflected on this, a singular thought ignited within her. Could her next exhibition be a manifestation of her struggle and vulnerability? The idea swirled tantalizingly in her mind. It beckoned her forward, hinting at liberation and exploration. She found herself ready to confront the blank canvas of her existence, merging fear and aspiration into something tangible. Would this marked leap redefine her relationship with herself and her craft? Could unveiling her truth be the catalyst for both personal growth and artistic rebirth? The stakes felt monumental, and yet the momentum was undeniable. As those possibilities danced in her imagination, she held her breath, preparing to dive deeper into this journey. What awaited her on this path could either fortify her spirit or challenge her reality in ways she never imagined. Would she gather the courage to step onto this new terrain, ready to redefine not just her art, but the very essence of who she was? The next morning, Emily awoke with a restless energy buzzing beneath her skin. It felt like a seismic shift had occurred overnight, one that nudged her toward both vulnerability and the urgency to create. She bolted upright in bed, her mind racing with images of her new exhibition, the kind of artistic expression that would echo her most profound fears and aspirations. Her sketchbook lay open on the desk, its pages waiting for the ink of inspiration she had only begun to find. Flipping through her past works, she recognized a pattern. Each piece, while technically sound, shied away from delving into the raw, palpable truths of her experiences. They were beautiful, but safe. Today, that would change. While making coffee, she fought against the self-doubt threatening to creep. Did she truly have the credibility to share these raw elements of her life? What if her art was seen as desperate instead of transformative? Minutes passed until she caught her reflection in the kitchen window. Behind the apprehension was a burgeoning sense of determination. She was done hiding behind pretty facades. She needed to manifest her truth. Fueled by this resolve, Emily gathered her supplies, her heart quickening with every brush and canvas she placed into her bag. The studio would serve as her sanctuary, a place where her bravest expressions could be born. Each stroke of the brush now had the potential to unlock a door she had long kept shut. Arriving at the studio, Emily felt the familiar sense of paint wafting through the air. Yet today, it was tinged with a sense of possibility. She approached her easel, tension vibrating in her fingers as they hovered over the canvas. She closed her eyes for just a moment, drawing a deep breath to ground herself. What transpired next was fluid, almost instinctual. A base of dark hues, a reflection of her uncertainties, began to emerge. Layer upon layer, she splashed colors reminiscent of aching vulnerability, each one a representation of what had once held her captive. The act felt cathartic, as if she were transforming her struggles into something that could finally breathe. But as the colors melded, she realized that she was not only channeling her own difficulties, but growing aware of the patterns and threads from those experiences that connected to others. What if someone viewing her art could see themselves in her struggle? What if her darkest moments could serve as a spark for someone else's resilience? The empire of her doubts began to fracture under the weight of that revelation. With newfound momentum, Emily decided to document this journey. Her sessions at the studio, her thoughts, and the evolution of each piece would be preserved in a journal. It would not only chart her progress, but potentially reveal hidden treasures of insight she might glean about herself along the way. Days turned into weeks as she immersed herself in both creating and documenting her process. The walls of her studio blossomed with art that stole breaths, works that pulsated with sincerity and vulnerability. Emily envisioned her exhibition not as a presentation, but as an experience, a place where authenticity gripped the audience and taught them courage through her brushstrokes. Yet, amidst this creative flourish, a gnawing question persisted. How would the world respond? The clamor of doubt began asserting itself again, whispering that people may question her authority to speak her truth. Would it be enough to move beyond the confines of her own narrative and touch hearts? Her internal struggle intensified as the exhibition date approached. In the relative silence of her studio one afternoon, a sudden thought pierced through her apprehensions. Was she ready to open not just her heart, but her work to the judgmental eyes of the world? What lay beyond that threshold? A revelation that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Emily caught her breath. The enormity of the impending leap felt more palpable than ever. As she brushed the final stroke on one of her favorite pieces, she could sense that the actual battle was only just beginning. It would be a challenge to embrace her vulnerabilities publicly while confronting the potential backlash. With every stroke, she found the complicated knot of expectation tightening, pushing her into a corner. Was the pursuit of authenticity worth the risk? Would risking the acceptance of the world lead only to conflict with herself? Determined not to retreat, she allowed her heart to swell with the possibility of transformation for both herself and those who would witness her work. As she stepped back to admire her nearly complete creation, she pondered her next move. Could the act of unveiling her entire self truly liberate her spirit, or would it leave her more fractured than ever? With a trembling heart, she prepared to confront the world, her fears and hopes encapsulated on canvas, ready to ignite conversations she had long postponed. The hour was approaching for her to prove that she was more than her insecurities. She was a conduit of truth that resonated beyond her singular experience. And as the doubts churned in her mind, a sharper thought took root. What if her greatest criticism came not from others, but from herself? Would she embrace her inner critic or rise above it? Days unfolded in an exhilarating blur as Emily continued to pour her soul into her art. The vibrancy of her studio mirrored her emotional journey, a kaleidoscope of chaotic hues and splashes, signifying both her struggle and victory. Yet, at the core of this creative renaissance lay a growing anxiety that twisted in her stomach. The exhibition date loomed closer, like a specter casting shadows over her newfound confidence. With each passing day, Emily wrestled intensively with her thoughts, dissecting every inclination, every hesitance. The competitions of critique she faced within her mind became an endless echo, each doubt reverberating louder than the last. Would the audience see her authenticity, or would they merely perceive a facade? What if they dismissed the depth of her experiences as mere amateurism? As she hunched over her journal, scribbling down thoughts that often seemed disjointed and raw, she felt the push and pull of vulnerability like a tide. She had concocted a list of things to do, promises to herself that she felt might guide her through the turbulence. Most pressing was the decision to invite her closest friends to the exhibition, to create a supportive fortress against the judgment that was sure to come. However, the thought of their eyes scrutinizing her work ignited new waves of self-doubt. What if they couldn't connect with the authenticity she sought to express? Eyeing the blank pages of her journal, the blank canvas felt less daunting, more promising than this outspoken vulnerability. Yet each brushstroke also echoed back reminders that she
had once donned a mask, and now she sought to rip it off. In her darkest moments at the studio, confrontation lit the air around her. The questions spiraled into deeper fears of being exposed. What truly constituted art? Was it the technical skill or the emotional underpinning? What if she couldn't reconcile her desire to be genuine with the need to be impressive? With trembling hands, she glided her fingers over a finished piece, an explosion of colors that shouted her pain, joy, and fears with reckless abandon. For an instant, a sense of resolve washed over her. She recalled another artist she admired who spoke candidly of making art not for accolades, but to foster connection. This notion began to take root in her mind, like a seed unfurling in the warmth of potential. Maybe her mission extended beyond herself. It was an invitation for dialogue. If she could create art that unlocked a shared experience, her exposure wouldn't be just her burden to bear, but a bridge for others to traverse their own vulnerabilities. Stepping back from the canvases, she let the landscape of her studio envelop her like an embrace. Turning industry respect on its head, Emily reminded herself of her original intent. The prospect of a shared story, a voice asking, "Do you see me?" was far more compelling than fear of rejection.
But every boost of courage was always met with the sneering co-pilot of anxiety whispering that these insights might not be enough. As much as she longed to channel her inner strength, the specter of fear lingered. Putting her brush down, Emily pondered the nature of her choice. Would she lift the veil to reveal her truth, knowing full well the aftermath wasn't guaranteed to be what she envisioned? Pressing her palm against the cool canvas, she steeled herself for the tumultuous leap ahead. The faintest notion of clarity punctured through the murkiness of her thoughts. Just as she began to formulate a strategy to navigate the unveiling, an unexpected thought blossomed. What if this journey wasn't only about her need for acceptance, but an avenue to uncover collective healing? As night crept in, shadows danced through her studio, drawing the lines between hope and fear yet again. Would she confront that critical voice inside her head and emerge stronger, or retreat into the safety of silence? Just then, her phone buzzed with a text from her friend Sarah. "Can't wait to see your exhibition. You're going to be amazing." A tinge of warmth coursed through Emily, but it was soon thwarted by the familiar chill of doubt. Could she believe that message, or had it become merely another voice drowned out in a chorus of self-doubt? The walls felt both confining and liberating in that moment, and the dichotomy split apart in her mind. This was her chance to challenge not only the world outside, but the internal battle raging within her. And as she closed her journal for the night, determination flickered.
Just barely reigniting the fire within. The juncture of public exposure and personal truth loomed ahead, and with it, a realization struck her. Was she actually prepared to face the critiques that would inevitably arise, not just from others, but from her own standards? With a breath drawn deep into her core, she knew she was only one step away from answering that question. But would she be willing to take it? The sun rose above Emily's studio, its warm light spilling through the windows and cascading over her paintings like a gentle embrace. As she sat, sipping her coffee, the vivid colors of her creative world seemed to come alive even more. But rather than invigorate it, the sunlight amplified her worries, each beam illuminating the thoughts that plagued her mind. The deadline for her exhibition was no longer weeks away. It loomed within days. The reality of her impending showcase collided with her thoughts, sparking a memory of the last expansive workshop she had attended at the community center, where artists laid bare their insecurities alongside their work. Each participant had shared their fears, their failures, and the stories behind their creations. Hearing these confessions had instilled a camaraderie that transcended the art itself, proof that vulnerability could forge connections. Wasn't that the essence of art? To strip away facades and invite authenticity to take the forefront? Yet, the gnawing doubts still snared her thoughts. It was time to confront the specter of judgment that loomed, reminding her that art was subjective. Could she stand resolute against the noise that threatened to drown out her voice? Emily plucked up her journal, flipping through pages filled with sketches and fragmented ideas. In the margins, her handwriting grew more frantic as the exhibition date neared. Between moments of creativity flowed thoughts of doubt, culminating in a painful list of what-ifs. Instead of penning down her unease, she decided to transform it into a concrete plan. What if I prepare for criticism? What if I embrace it as a part of my work? She took a deep breath and allowed herself to explore what that meant. Perhaps she could welcome feedback not as an indictment of her worth, but as an opportunity to grow, to evolve. Yet, a part of her recoiled at the prospect. Did she possess the resilience to meet criticism head-on? The answer lay in her choice to hold her friends close during this transition. Yet another layer of conflict emerged. How could she shield herself from judgment while exposing her innermost fears? This decision required her to create a safe space, not just for herself, but for those who came to support her. Could they become her anchor amidst the turbulent sea of self-examination? With renewed vigor, Emily picked up her brush and approached the blank canvas once more. Today, her intention wasn't merely to create, but to evolve her narrative.
She splashed mesmerizing hues together, allowing her subconscious to guide her. Each stroke began to unravel the tapestry of
her anxieties into something tangible. The energy flowed through her veins, each splatter, each line a manifestation of her internal struggle. Halfway through the piece, she felt the longing to include elements she hadn't initially considered vital. Unfurling the emotional fears she harbored about her past relationships and artistic endurance felt both terrifying and necessary. If these raw emotions were what made her human, why hide them? This could be her chance to invite viewers on a journey of collective healing, where they could not only witness her vulnerabilities, but also feel empowered to confront their own. The act of creation morphed into a powerful conversation, a dialogue with both herself and her audience, inviting them to engage with her work intimately. This revelation surged through her, flooding her heart with purpose. This was more than an exhibition, it was a communion of introspection and community. Not long after, with one final stroke completing the piece, Emily studied her work, a profound feeling of satisfaction swelling within her. She had channeled her worries into a reflection of self-discovery. Confidently, she reassured herself that facing judgment wouldn't signify failure, but rather an exhilarating leap toward growth. Just then, a notification sounded from her phone, breaking the spell of her creative focus. It was a message from Sarah again, this time bearing something unexpected. "So excited to see how you've transformed. Are you ready for some tough love?" An unfamiliar knot twisted tightly in Emily's stomach at the insinuation of impending critiques. Was she truly prepared for the realities of judgment, not only from her friends, but also from the broader world that awaited her? As she pondered this new challenge, a flicker of uncertainty sparked. The moment was upon her, and she could feel the threshold of transformation before her, both exhilarating and terrifying. Was she ready to confront the truth within herself while opening the door to public observation? In her heart, she knew this art was simply a reflection of her journey. The confrontation was bound to happen. Emily picked up her brush again, fear mingling with determination, wondering if she would seize this opportunity to speak her truth aloud and ultimately find liberation in vulnerability. But that question lingered in her mind. Could she truly embrace the risks that came with unveiling not just her art, but her soul? Emily stood in her studio, brush poised above the canvas, her mind swirling with the weight of uncertainty. The vibrant colors around her felt like they were dancing in anticipation, yet she was rooted, unsure of how to bridge the gap between her inner turmoil and the masterpiece waiting to emerge. With a resolute exhale, she began to paint again. The brushes fluttered against the canvas, guided by an urgency to transform fear into something tangible. Each vibrant stroke was a silent protest against the lingering doubt that cast a long shadow across her spirit. She thought of Sarah's message, ready for some tough love, and wondered if she truly understood just how terrifying this encounter with critique could be. What she realized, as colors collided and blended on the canvas, was that her art had become a reflection not just of her experiences, but of her aspirations. Each layer she added whispered messages of courage, vulnerability, and the deep desire for connection. She felt as if every brushstroke was a piece of communication, an offering of her true self to be examined under the harsh light of judgment, with all its potential for rejection or acceptance. The room around her began to fade. Instead of focusing on the critical eyes she feared, Emily envisioned those who might stand before her canvas, senses engaged with the emotion she poured into those strokes. What if their reactions were more than criticism? What if they saw the humanity behind her work? Perhaps they would join her in acknowledging the complexity of being an artist, both beautiful and painful. The lilt of her brush became more confident as notions of despair transformed into moments of clarity. Emily recognized that she had been preparing for this moment far longer than the days that marked her countdown to the exhibition. It was in the late-night sketches, the endless revisions, the workshops where she dared to share her insecurities.
Every experience had contributed to her evolution, carving a path toward this very moment. Taking a break from the canvas, Emily moved to her easel where her journal lay open. She scribbled out her fears, the what-ifs that once held her hostage. Fighting through the fray of what if they don't understand, or what if I'm not good enough, she documented her intentions. My art is not just for them. It's a dialogue. It's my truth, stripped bare. This mantra rang true, solidifying her resolve. If she could share, with authenticity, the essence of her journey, poignant failures and exhilarating victories alike, then perhaps her nerves could be transmuted into something fruitful, a bridge between her heart and the eyes that perceived it. She returned to her canvas, bolstered by this newfound clarity. Each application of color resonated with a fraught blend of vulnerability and empowerment, teaching her that real growth often dances on the precipice of discomfort. As she lost herself in the creative rhythm, her internal narrative shifted. Emily was not merely preparing for judgment, she was inviting connection, sparking conversations, and embracing the catharsis that came alongside them. With every finished detail, she realized the art form had become a testament to her journey, not just a reflection of struggles, but a celebration of resilience. Yet, the gnawing apprehension still lingered, the reality of Saturday's exhibition looming on the horizon. The thought echoed within her, like a pulse. Would she be proud to stand among the critiques, or would she falter in front of her audience? As she stepped back to assess her progress, she was struck by a sudden clarity. This was her moment for self-assertion. Emily understood that true validation wouldn't come from others, but from recognizing her own worth in
the creative process. The clock ticked audibly in the background, each second counting down to an unavoidable encounter. Would she embrace the criticism she once feared, or would it shackle her growth? Embracing this feeling of exhilarating uncertainty, she began to finalize her piece. As the paint dried, the tension built within her. This wasn't merely about a showcase, it was about a pivotal moment woven into her narrative. Could she endure the unveiling of her essence? Emily leans closer to the canvas, examining it with a mix of awe and trepidation, confident but battling the echoes of doubt. With a determined breath, she whispered to herself, "The moment has come to face my truth." Could she allow herself to be seen for all she was, in art and in life? The day of the exhibition dawned bright and brisk, an electric energy pulsating through the air as Emily prepared for the unveiling of her soul on canvas. No longer just an artist, she was a vessel of vulnerability and wonder, poised to step into the uncertain terrain where critique would meet creativity. Standing in front of her full-length mirror, she adjusted her flowing dress, a vibrant representation of the colors she so lovingly splattered onto the canvases. Each brushstroke radiated the essence of her journey, uncertain yet bold, melancholy yet hopeful. The studio, transformed from her private sanctuary into a gallery, buzzed gently with the anticipation of friends, family, and even strangers who might soon witness her truth. As the minutes ticked closer, the facade of confidence began to scale the heights of her anxiety. Would they see her? Would they understand what lay behind the layers of paint? Her heart quickened as the first guests began to arrive, the familiar faces of friends mingling joyfully with the curious newcomers. Each greeting, each embrace steadied her resolve, peeling back old layers of fear. Sarah clasped her hands and exclaimed, "This is amazing, Em! You're ready for this!" The words flowed gently, wrapping around Emily like a protective blanket. With every compliment received, her heart softened. Fragments of anxiety began transforming into fragments of possibility. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe and envision the beauty of shared experience, even amidst her trepidation. As people gathered around her artwork, the rustling whispers echoed her fears and frustrations. Look how she captures the paradox of vulnerability. The colors speak so vividly of emotional struggles, aren't they stunning? Awash with pride and apprehension, Emily fumbled for her thoughts. The accolades felt wonderful,
yet she fought the impulse to retreat back into the security of self-doubt. Then, as a group of guests approached one painting, a dynamic whirl of blues and reds, Emily couldn't help but eavesdrop on their conversation. "This reminds me of my own struggles," one woman murmured, her eyes glistening with recognition. "It's like she's revealing the raw essence of who we are, under the layers we wear." The connection she witnessed took root in her heart, a powerful validation that her artistry could indeed bridge
gaps between disparate lives. In that moment of recognition, Emily's earlier defenses crumbled, swept away like fallen leaves. She realized that her art was not merely about personal expression, but an echo of humanity resonating through shared experiences. As the evening unfolded, Emily found herself engaging in deeper conversations that surpassed polite exchanges. She spoke passionately about her process, her struggles, and her desire to create a dialogue about vulnerability through her art. Slowly, she began to speak boldly about her fears and aspirations, no longer as a mere artist, but as an individual reclaiming her narrative. Embarrassments faded. In their place stood a burgeoning sense of empowerment. The turning point lingered, undeniably visible in every exchange. Audience members reached toward her, making connections that transcended the fear-laden judgments she once feared. Each engagement affirmed her worth, solidified her identity, and provided an unshakable sense of belonging. As the night drew to a close, Sarah squeezed Emily's hand, her voice radiating warmth. "You did it. You really exposed yourself tonight. I'm so proud of you." Beneath the weight of her friend's praise, Emily felt a radiant glow encircle her heart, a well-deserved recognition of her triumph over self-doubt. She had stepped forward, grasped hold of vulnerability, and in return, she had awakened the dignity of personal truth. Later, standing before her final painting, she marveled at how it had become not just a reflection of her own journey, but a testament to collective humanity. With newfound solidity in herself, she grinned at the realization that acceptance began from within. With each stroke of paint, she not only revealed her heart, but resonated with countless lives around her. Emily took a deep breath, feeling a tidal wave of serenity washing over her. The culmination of her efforts wasn't about achieving accolades or recognition. It had always been about connection, vulnerability, and liberating her voice through art. She stood more confident than ever, an artist fortified by growth, embracing the narratives that shaped her. The night concluded with a flurry of soft farewells, and as the last guest departed, Emily felt the fibers of her new reality weaving together. A consciousness of competence, a recognition of worthiness, and, above all, a heart open to endless possibilities. This was not merely an exhibition. It was the dawn of her new chapter. Here, stripped of fear and judgment, Emily finally embraced who she was meant to be, a powerful artist, a courageous woman, and a champion of her own story. It was clear to her now, embracing vulnerability transformed her past struggles into an authentic celebration of her future. And as she turned to survey the empty gallery, the finality of the moment settled in, a quiet yet resonant affirmation echoing through her soul. She was ready for this, and the world was indeed ready for her. Now is the moment for you to experience incredible storytelling. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support. Comment your reactions and theories about Emily's journey, and share your thoughts on the power of vulnerability. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this uplifting conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to enrich someone else's life with this transformative narrative.